where to walk and, navigate the tank. And so, yeah, it's something to be, really, really, really careful of.
All right. Well, good luck with that battle. I've got some in my tank. I've never feared it. I kind of feel like it's got to go, and I just kind of from time to time grab a few handfuls and throw it away.
Right.
And that's it. I've not had reactions ever, and I've had the same species of paleothora, like the original brown mat. Kind of looks cool under blue light. It looks kind of green.
Yeah,
but it's the stuff. I always joke that this is the stuff they use in the movies where they get the needle and they pull it out and they take care of such and such. This is like the official toxic coral.
Right.
And I just rip out handfuls, bag it up, throw it in the trash, and get rid of it. I've never actually felt anything. I've never felt sick working on my tank. I don't breathe it. I don't lick it. I don't do anything. In your case, you're having to submerge yourself. That's a little different than me putting to my armpit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just like there's no absolutes anything in the animal kingdom. Not all paleothora are created equally. So depending on the species, some range to, basically nothing.
How strong they are. Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, I think it also depends on how upset you make them. Right?
Yeah.
Like you just upset them a little, they're not going to bother you too much. You upset them a lot. And, but yeah, just the recommendations of like I tell people if they can just remove the rocks that they're on, or if you can snip underneath them and remove the surface of the, if you don't want to take your rock apart, but do small numbers, have extra carbon available, extra phosban or something like that's gonna grab compounds. And really just getting them in a bucket or a bag and then a lot of bleach. And, because I was even getting concerned when I was throwing some of my rocks out, like, well, the guy who empties the dumpster, like it's a real possibility. So, everything got bleached, nuked, completely melted, and then discarded.
So do you feel, I think you kind of alluded to this, and if you don't want to get into it, that's fine. But I believe you were saying also, besides it affecting you, you are starting to think that more aquariums are suffering from tank problems because of the pallies in their water column.
I think it certainly can be an issue, and it's nothing that's going to show up on the best ICP test. And you'll look for issues if you're having some fish mortalities and you're seeing no parasitic load on these fish, but they're acting and reacting like the sudden death thing. I mean, yes, it's certain fish are just going to go. Like there's no way around that. But I think some of that maybe could be attributed to a paleothoa release or stress. So I think it's definitely I think it's something that's there, and I think needs a closer look, especially as people's tanks get more full of paleothoa over time.
Right.
And I think
it's a greater mass.
Oh, I hear a door.
The background is changing.
My evening got better. Gail, say hi, Gail. Hi. That's Mark. And the Dallas.
You're going to be on YouTube soon.
You're going to. Hi, baby.
Hi.
Drive was okay?
Yeah.
Cool. It's windy out there, huh?
Oh my God. It's like I couldn't even open the door.
So.
All right.
So paleothoa. I think it's yeah.
So has it affected your tank? Have you seen issues? Do you want to talk about it?
I'd rather it not air.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Right.
All right, that's fine. Let me change gears. I wanted to ask you. All right, let's just talk about the day-to-day. Do you literally test the water, all the tests, every single day?
You're a funny guy. Funny. I know you had to ask it, but so no. I have 2 pinpoint pH meters on the tank. I've always had 2. So pH and temperature is recorded physically on a chart, on a piece of paper that has all the other standard elements to test for. Those will get tested for, over time. Alkalinity and stuff is just a couple times a month, maybe. I do have Trident now, which is nice. Okay. I think it's a great layer of protection, and any points in our tank where we can have redundancy, and that any category redundancy will save your day. So
you said you have the Trident testing the water for you? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, got it. It cut out right as you said the word. I was like, did you say Trident? Because I didn't hear what you're using for the tester.
Yeah. Oh yes, thankfully Terrence and the guys over there and Tom came by and helped me, help this old reefer set up the new technology. And so I have the I could go on my phone now and see where my, and it's proven to be very accurate. They're very generous with their support of the aquarium. And Tom is awesome, and I'm lucky that he's here on Long Island. And so yeah, I mean, and then also just running a system for this, you get a grip, you get a feel, you get a gut meter of what's going on and how much you're dosing and what you need to do, and then double check this. But overall, it's pH, alkalinity is good to check. Temperature, because that could change really quickly. Have your alerts set up on whatever monitor system you have your ranges entered in. Having that layer of protection, that extra warning time, could be the difference of saving your tank or not.
Hey, when I came to see you last September, there was some giant thing in the back of the building. Were you getting a new generator installed to provide power, or what was that thing?
Yeah, that's we're pretty proud of that. It's a CHP unit, combined heat and power. So there are so many people here on Long Island and more, and how to supply power to them. So there's a lot of incentives to generate your own power, however possible. So the CHP unit is it's a V12 engine that's powered by natural gas. So we're generating a majority of our electricity on site, which takes the load off of the grid. So the grid company is very happy. They don't have to build another. But the key to the CHP unit, it's the combined heat and power. So we take the waste heat, because we have an engine that's burning fuel. We take that heat that's coming off the engine, and then we either apply that heat directly to the building for heating the building. But where we really score is we take that heat and run it to absorption chillers. And absorption chillers, actually, you get cooling by adding heat. And I don't know this or remember the specifics of it, but you're adding heat to this solution, which you're doing an expansion and contraction kind of thing, just like with a compressor. But I get 80 tons of cooling, upwards of 80 tons of cooling off the waste heat from the generator. And that's where the efficiency comes in, and that's where the return on investment comes in, because it's $1 million machine. We were fortunate enough, because there are incentives, we got about $495,000 in rebates. So you're looking at an ROI of 3 to 5 years, which is phenomenal. And as long as you utilize the waste heat efficiently, that's where you make your savings and your cut down on your expenses.
That is so neat. So your electric bill is down if you don't think about you bought this very expensive machine, because less from the grid, like you said.
Yeah. So our natural gas bill went way up, but electric bill goes way down. And then my electric chillers that have to cool many things around the aquarium, including the seal and sea lion pools, which are outdoors in the summer, and they want 60 degrees. So that's a huge, just picture keeping a swimming pool at 60 degrees, how big a chiller you would need. And now if I can get all of that for free, that cooling, that's a huge saving on the run. The compressors aren't running as much, if at all. So yeah, it was, we looked into a lot of different variables, and this one made the most sense.
Okay, so I got a question for you. It's actually from Drex. He asked it before you came on. He said, how difficult is it for you to maintain parameters? For example, if magnesium is down, what do you do and how do you do it to get that back on track?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like to draw the analogies of, like, because the tank is so large, it's like a big freighter, big tanker. And so, like, when they need to make a turn, they just don't turn on the spot. They're starting 5 miles ahead. And so I like to, like, keep that middle line and just nudging left to right. So if it goes a little low, I want to be able to nudge it back. If it goes a little high, I can reduce. So for, like, magnesium, got my good old buddy Bob Stark from ESV, the brother I never had. He's an awesome guy there, and their crew there with Victoria and Ed and the gang there. So I have a 150-gallon vat that I throw in. I get a concentrated magnesium stuff from Bob. It ends up being about 330 pounds of dry magnesium chloride, mag sulfates. That gets mixed up. That's hooked up to a dosing pump. That is then dosed to the tank. I have that adjusted, so I'm kind of, in general, equaling the uptake. And again, I will test the magnesium to see, like, okay, well, stuff's growing a little faster now. Magnesium dropped, or dosing pump tripped out, like, you know. So yeah, so it's a matter of more nudging, like nudging the heading of this huge vessel. Like, you don't want to do big drastic turns, and maintaining salinity at full strength is, I think, really key. Learned that one early on from Greg Bigerman. Some people call him Craig Bigman, but he'll always be Greg Bigerman to me. And I was struggling with some parameters. My salinity was a little low, and he just said, "Listen, bring your salinity up to full strength. Everything else will come up with it, and then once you're there, then maintaining it is a lot easier." And of course, he's right. And so that has made things a lot easier versus maintaining a lower salinity. Maybe you're thinking, oh, I'm going to reduce my fish parasite situation or something, but then you're struggling on the other parameters. And then also, just on a side note, is I think too many people chase numbers. So we kind of know what the basic numbers should be. But if your tank is doing phenomenal and one of your numbers isn't the textbook number, so what? Like, don't chase that number. Like, try to keep the numbers where they should be. But every tank is different. And if your tank is doing great over time, don't get caught up in chasing a number. pH probes will calibrate beautifully. Put them back in salt water. And another Greg Bingerman hint to me was, even though a pH probe will calibrate perfectly and easily in calibration solute, once you put it back in salt water, if that probe is not good. So one time I was chasing pH, and then I finally pulled out my Salifert test kit off the shelf and was just like, no, my pH is fine. So, you know, and like Sanjay will always say, like, just because something is digital doesn't mean it's better. And he's got a great lecture on that whole thing, on accuracy versus, So adjusting those numbers, like magnesium or something, or calcium, is just, you know, and it's really for any tank, but just nudging it.
All right, let's switch to, I really want to talk about equipment, but we only have 7 minutes. I noticed you're starting to embrace more LED lights over your reef tank. You put one up recently, I forget the brand, but it looked like a speaker to me more than a light. Just the shape and the holes, I was like, you're playing music to the reef?
Yeah, that was Kessel was kind enough to send me the A2000. Right? Oh boy, A200, A2000. That's my dyslexia kicking in. But yeah, that's a pretty impressive unit so far. Just got it on the tank, giving some feedback. The max spec LEDs, I have the 500 watt and 300 watt. The 300 watt was one of their prototypes that I've had for, gosh, it's closing in on 6 years. They're 500 watters. I did replace the LEDs on that 300 watter not too long ago. They sent me a replacement. I was able to replace it, which was relief from this metal halide guy as far as like switching out a bulb. It was a little more work than switching a bulb, but the fact that it could be done in-house, and they really beefed up that whole disc system with the heat dissipation and things. But I've been super happy with the max spec 500 watt LEDs. So yes, the tank will be LED, all LED someday. Allied manufacturers are dropping out.
Yeah.
No demand. There's no need. Some are still making them. It's going to be like LPs and vinyl records. The guys who hung in there are pressing more vinyl now than they did in the 70s.
Yeah.
So I think there'll be a few niche guys who keep the halide thing going. But when you look at bulb availability and expense, but I think they're getting the LEDs now where they can kind of duplicate the spectrum and the texture of metal halide. That was always my concern with LEDs, is they're so harsh. They're too. I liken it to the guys who, when CDs first came out, they were like, screw CDs, there's no tone, there's no texture compared to vinyl. That's how I feel about it. But when I have an LED and I want a yellow tank to look like a yellow tank, like that's not sparkly or glittery or like so. But yeah, I've got I think I have at least 4 or 5 of the max spec LEDs above the reef tank now. So yeah. Someday.
And are you still changing or dealing with lights from a canoe?
On the Shark Tank, yes.
Oh, on the Shark Tank, not on the reef.
Reef. I have aluminum picks that I can spread across tops of the tank, so I have like walkways that I can get on. But Shark Tank, yeah, I threw my kids in there in the kayaks. Good luck, kids. Just push them off. Don't get back till it's done. So I've got some great shots of them out there with me changing the halide bulbs on the Shark Tank.
That is great. Do not leave the dinghy. All right. So do you have a favorite piece of equipment on your 20,000 gallon reef? Is there one thing that you're just like, I couldn't live without this thing?
Let's see. Well, the skimmer that I built 22 years ago, that's custom made out of polyethylene containers and handles 200 gallons a minute and has a 2.5 minute residence time. And its 500 gallon chamber holds a special part in my house, in my home, my heart. I think one of the big game changers were the propeller driven pumps. And, there's a few out there now, but the Hydro Wizard pump, where you're using 348 watts and can generate 50,000 gallons an hour flow, was a game changer. Where you could adjust the flow on that like any of the smaller prop units now, so you can pulse it and get a wave and flow. And I consider that could achieve it with other pumps and stuff, but not as easily and not cheaply. And then you have a number of different manufacturers out there now, which I'm excited to try. The Abyss has great prop units out there now. So I would think, and the Carlson surge device has been running for, I don't know, 18 years now and never had to adjust it.
Is it beneficial, or is it more just a cool effect?
Oh, it's definitely beneficial. It's dumping 300 gallons in 35 seconds. So that like that will blow me over, literally. And we modified the internal plumbing so that we actually get the siphon break a lot quicker. So there's not a lot of air introduction. And then if you adjust the frequency of the dump, the bubbles all dissipate within a very short period of time. So then you have like clearer water. And it actually, the public loves to see that surge of bubbles initially come into the system. So it's a great amount of energy into the system with very little energy input.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How many return pumps on this giant tank of yours?
Oh, geez. So there's a 5 horsepower closed loop pump. So that's like over 200 gallons a minute. A 3 horsepower pump on the sand filter. That's about 120 gallons a minute. There's a 1.5 horsepower pump on another sand filter. So that's roughly 80 to 90 gallons a minute. Let's see, what else is on there? The Hydro Wizard, which varies depending on what setting it's at. Mm-hmm. Whole bunch of sea swirls on the system. I love my sea swirl. So there's 7 of them on the tank.
But basically 3 return pumps for sure. Basically, if obviously you don't put it all on one pump, because if it fails, there's no return.
We're back to redundancy. Yeah. So there's 2 protein skimmers. So there's another 5 horsepower pump on the protein skimmer. That's run a 2-inch Venturi, and that also introduces the ozone into the system, one gram per tiny bit. There's also another 1.5 horse pump on a monster ETS downdraft skimmer that was built years ago. So again, redundancy, 2 skimmers in case it goes down, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of horsepower moving water on that system.
All right, so out of 21 years, what has been the worst thing to happen in your reef tank?
Wow, that's a good question. We could make a list.
Has there been many of those days, or has it been like one epic, unbelievable, never want to do that ever again in my life?
We could make a list. I think the first real, the groin, suck the air out of you moment, acro eating flatworms. So when I realized they were in the system, that was not a good day. Been able to manage.
I know you handled it like a champ. I was like, no big deal. Everyone else is killing their acros, and you're just watering them in the reef.
I'm watering them. I got to thank my friend Fernando for instilling the idea, because he was studying them. Fernando out at Scripps in California, and he was trying to get them off the coral intact to study them, because these were new to science. So that was, for the people that study these things, that's like huge. He'd put the coral in a petri dish with some salt water and then pipette RO water onto them, and that would irritate them and dislodge them, and they would drop off, and then they had them intact. And I'm like, I know what I can, just on a little grander scale. So I would just go in with the garden hose and flush the corals off. And first time I did it, it looked like a snow globe, just flatworms. And I thought, all right, moron, you just spread them even more in the tank. But then the fish actually eat them. They love them. And the fish got conditioned to the point, if they saw me going with the hose, they would follow me with the hose. So these guys taste good, like really good, apparently. They don't invest any energy in toxin because they're stealth. So why taste bad, right? So yeah, I was able to eventually, I was diving 2 times a week and flushing. Then it went to once a week, and then it went to once every 2 weeks, and then once a month, and now every couple of months. And if I see a dozen worms on a dive now, so you become the primary predator, and that can, so they live with them in the wild also, just not in the numbers that accumulate in our systems. And then thinking back to my first acros back in 1992, we were seeing acro eating flatworms then, or the effects of them, but we weren't looking close enough. but they were there then. I know it. Yeah.
So that wasn't even really a bad one. I mean, it's not like you discover a leak at the bottom of the tank.
All my
That's
gray
just
hair,
some flatworms. That's
all
nothing.
all my gray hair from corals, man. My kids, I raised 3 boys and they were awesome. I got no gray hairs from my kids, all from coral. But yeah, but that was a period of several weeks of just despair. Like, yeah, but got through it.
Well, I got to tell you, literally you and your reaction to them and how you're handling water. And, I was just like, oh, this is no big deal, because I had them in my reef and I knew what you were doing. And I said, well, if he can do it with a garden hose, I can do it with a turkey baster.
Absolutely.
And so I was doing that at first, and I had an anthias that worked with me. So I would just kill all the flow in the tank so that it was stagnant.
Yeah.
Turkey-based RO water on a Acropora valida. The flatworm came flying off, and my lyre-tail anthias came out, ate it, and sat down and watched like a perch. It perched. I think it's in the perch family. And it perched and it waited until I did another, and we teamworked. And then I was like, okay, this water thing is too tedious. It's too much work. So I got a maxi jet and a really long extension cord, and I would just hold it in my hand and I would just hit it on the coral, and I'd stay on that one spot with the nozzle for like 20 seconds. And then you'd see this thing like wiggling, and then it would fly off. And again, the anthias came and ate it. And I just did that once a week, and I never tore my reef apart, because I said, it's just worms. It's no big deal. Joe handled it in a 20,000-gallon reef. How bad could it be?
Well, then you're sitting there in the tank scuba diving with a garden hose, watering your corals, and the staff thinks Joe needs a vacation. So yeah, there's that.
No, seriously, it was because of your lack of an overreaction that I really thought it was no big deal. Because I remember back when that was like big news, acrorating flatworms, people would take every coral out of their tank, put them in a separate tank, dip them every week, and they'd say I lost 80 to 90% of my corals.
Yeah.
Joe didn't do that. Joe just used water.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do, and so I was the same as you. I just did it in my tank and I handled it, and it resolved itself. It wasn't a nightmare.
Yeah. So, the primary just get ahead of their reproductive curve.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
So you were in depression, and I was like, it's no big deal. Look how well Joe handled it. So apparently the depression was literally in your head, and none of us saw it.
Yeah. Well, that's, you can't show fear. You're the curator.
Yeah, true. Well, okay. Guys, we're just over an hour. We should wrap up. If you have any questions, unmute yourself and ask Joe a couple of questions, and then we'll just go ahead and finish our show for tonight.
Yeah.
All right, I got a couple. Mark actually asked the first 3 I had on my list, but during the COVID downtime, hobbyists spent a lot more time on their tanks, and making them look better and get in there and figure out a lot of the small issues to get done. But with a facility like yours, do you guys do any research through your systems?
Yeah, we'll do. We just had a college student or a high school student come in to do some biome study. So we set up some separate tanks with corals under different salinities, and he was going to compare the biome. So normally it's outside people coming in doing stuff. I've done a lot of work with Rutgers University on stylophora, and them studying the calcification and how corals are actually calcifying. And one of the cool things that came out of that was they were doing all the genetic testing, and they confirmed that the purple milka coral, purple milka stylo, came from the Red Sea. So that was pretty interesting. So we do some research depending on time. We're just getting out all of our aquaculture, and Noelle is getting all the aquaculture systems back up and running again. Again, a lot of things just had to get shut down during COVID. Is what's necessary, so through the years, Todd Gardner and crew raised. We were the first facility to raise anthias from spawning from the reef tank. And so we're quite proud of the in-house work that the staff does. And we've done research with folks at Hofstra University through the years. One professor was studying how sea stars right themselves. They, flip a sea star over, they flip over. Well, how do they know which side is up? Like, what are they? So it's been quite varied through all the years. We've done some sand tiger shark tagging and satellite tagging. And then we have the New York Marine Rescue Program that does all kinds of research and tagging of sea turtles and seals and things. So yeah, we want to keep it interesting, especially for the staff. My goal is to never have them feel like they're just janitors to the fish, where they just come in, eat, and go home. No matter what stage you're at, you like to tinker, you like to figure something out, you like to have something to work for and stay stimulated with. So that's a critical part of our job.
Okay. And then the other one, when you were talking about the LED lighting, you were excited about the Philips Coral Care lights when they came over here. Have you implemented them yet at all, or? Yes,
I've got them on a trough right now. And stuff. I don't have anything in the trough really right now. It's part of my rebuild at the moment. But I saw the Gen 1s and the Gen 2s when I was over in Germany, and the facilities that have been running the Gen 1s for years. And just phenomenal. So I think they have a really, really good product there, especially the Gen 2s, what they learned from the Gen 1s. And the Gen 1s, like I said, I saw aquaculture facilities using them. I saw people's home tanks that have been using them. And what was nice for me, being an old dude with metal halide guy, was when you looked at these tanks and these systems, it didn't look like LED. And I thought that was really important to my eye. So yes, thankfully, the folks over at Coral View, Chris sent me 2 samples to play with. And I have great expectations for them.
Okay.
Yeah, they're substantial too. When they feel beefy and just, a healthy light system there.
Okay.
No fans too. Great.
Okay, Joe, this is a pretty old system you're running. What is the oldest fish and your most favorite fish in your system?
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff dates back. As far as fish, I mean, I have in the clownfish tank, which is an often forgotten about or not talked about tank. It's a 2,400 gallon clownfish anemone tank. There are original fish in there from pre-opening. There's some maroon clowns in there that are probably, if I had to estimate, because they were probably a couple of years old when we got them, are over 25 now. We've got some of the fish in the reef tank that are originals from before opening day. Picking a favorite is tough, only because that's like picking your favorite child. And it does vary from time to time. I've always been partial to the orange spot filefish in the tank. Really enjoy watching them. And I mean, we've got a Pacu in the Amazon tank. It's a separate tank, I know, but he just turned 46 this year. So just an important message too, and on the aside, as far as which fish are people buying, how big do they get, and how long do they live? All too often, you just see too many fish being bought that should not be purchased for most hobby-sized tanks. So,
and Forrest, food-wise, you do order food for them. Is it fresh that you're feeding, and how do they prep to feed this system?
So, I prep all the food. It's a variety of mysis shrimp, the Piscine PE mysis, Hikari mysis. We'll chop up We get clams and silver sides from local fishers. Let's see, the PE calanus is a food that I'm using pretty often. Gemco makes a nice copepod also, and oh boy, I should have made a list of things. Spirulina flake, spirulina pellet is a crucial part of the diet. And oh man, I'm gonna have to send you guys the name because he's located in it's located up in Rhode Island. They grow all their own spirulina and package it.
Cool.
So I can. Hey Gail,
Yeah.
can you grab on the snack shelf there those spirulina?
Oh, yeah.
Ag. Oh, I think I just remembered it, but confirm it's Agcore. Agcore makes a great spirulina product, but I definitely will feed a variety of flake and pellet and frozen.
Cool. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think I remembered it. Don't worry about it. It's not on there. Yeah.
All right. I think I'll ask one last question and then we'll call it a night. A lot of us want our tanks to look clean and pretty, and so we worry about phosphate nitrate. That's water changes. By the way, I guess that's a question we didn't even ask. How often are you doing water changes? And how big are they? But so you can answer that in this. But I was going to ask you, how often or how much stuff do you get when it comes time to buy cleanup crew?
Yeah. So with regard to cleanup crew, through the years, my fish choices have limited quite a bit as far as what cleanup crew will survive in there long term. So Greg Scheimer, who sadly passed quite a few years ago, he was the first guy that turned me on to sea urchins and how much a sea urchin can eat compared to 2 dozen astrea snails or something like that. So primary algae control is done with urchins and tangs and things like that. So I don't really have too much of a cleanup crew per se. The little dove snails reproduce successfully in there. There's loads of copepods and mysids and things like that in the system as well. So as far as water changes, on average, 5 to 10% a week, usually done with backwashing the filters. There's times where it might be 15 or 20%. So yeah, I mean, 20% is 4,000 gallons. These numbers still freak me out a little bit 21 years later. So, you get a feel, you look and you'll be like, even though everything tests fine, so I'm gonna, you'll want to look for that canary in a coal mine coral that maybe doesn't look right. So you can bump up a series of water changes or do a series of smaller water changes over a set period of time, and then adjust your supplements accordingly depending on your saltwater source. So I'm using natural seawater that's mechanically filtered. Locally, it's low in everything reef related, so I tend to try and do smaller water changes so I don't knock the parameters down too much. But if I do, like the guy asked earlier, just bump up the dosing pumps a little bit, crank up the things and get the numbers back up where you want them. I don't know.
Great.
They were in that question, I think, but I don't.
No, I think that was great. I was kind of curious if you buy 20,000 astreas, 40,000 trochus. I was really curious. And who's counting all these stupid snails when you show up with their boxes full of snails or something?
Yeah. No, a lot of my triggers and stuff make short work of them. So,
yeah.
But even just watch your urchin population, because all of a sudden, like, things happen over time, and you'll be like, oh, wow, there's a little bit of algae showing up over there. And then you start looking around, you're like, oh, I could probably use another half dozen urchins. Like,
right.
It's important to keep track of your tank over time. Right. Things change over time. You have more coral. Your dosing that worked the first 2 years doesn't work in years. Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I hope you get to enjoy the rest of your evening.
Oh, I will.
Since you're working shorter shifts, you can go in late tomorrow. I guess it's fine.
Oh, I will. No, I won't be in on time tomorrow.
Joe, thank you again, and we look forward to being able to visit you in the public aquarium soon at the Long Island Aquarium.
Yeah, hopefully, once these Reef Club things get back going again, a return visit to you guys is always welcome.
Yeah.
So
keep me on. Sounds great. Thank you, Joe. Have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.
Okay, bye. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.